Oh, this
Oh,
is
hey.
being live stream. All right.
All right, we are live.
All right, let's see if I can find this in here.
Yes, we are live. Finally.
Yay.
Well, we had some technical difficulties and we finally got it set up. So I'm here with Liz and Brian from Dark Beauty.
Hello.
Their debut. And wow, almost a half hour of Facebook and Zoom deciding they don't want to cooperate with each other.
I hope we make it worth the wait.
I think you will. I mean, I new challenges always, but you know, it's at least it's working now. So get to talking about, first of all, talking about your debut. I just got this a couple days ago from our it was really weird that the mailman actually brought it to me and said, do you want to accept it? And I'm like, what do you mean, do I want to accept it? You know, this, and he didn't want to show me who it was from, so I had to take it, I guess.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, it didn't show it to me, and it's like, and he's asking me, you know, I forget how much it was, but that, and I'm like going, well, who's it from? And I said, well, I can't, I don't know why, but at least I got it. That's all that really matters. And I've been listening to it, and I'm really enjoying it. I mean, it has that, you know, really a mystic feel to it, and which I haven't seen that much in the prog genre that much. It's usually they'll talk about fantastical places, but it's the mood of the music isn't fitting with some of those themes.
Yeah, I think part of that could be because unlike the second album, when we started working on Fall from Grace, I don't know that the intention was for it to be a prog album. A lot of the music I'd done earlier in my career was prog, or at least prog adjacent. But Liz had done a lot of musical theater and opera, and this was the first time we'd really written together. And it turns out that where musical theater and my background meet kind of is in the prog world. Just because Liz's melodies are complex, and those complex melodies imply complex chord progressions. And then if I'm involved, I have to put a couple minutes worth of funny fiddle faddle and arrangements in there. So prog is where we meet, but it was really, Liz likes to say it's a story band, and it was always about the story and what kind of music best supports that story. And I think this was it.
Yeah, it and also too, I gotta say, this music is perfect for this time of the year, especially here in New England. You know, it's like everything's getting colder, and you know, shorter days, and it's like it just gets that. I think it's a perfect, you know, have the time of the year to listen to it. You know, you get certain emotions and of what the story. I mean, you know, I'm glad it's a story album, because you know, usually, I mean, you get concept albums but not a story. I haven't there's that many story albums.
Well, it's interesting because when I first started the project, I didn't realize any of this so far. And I started with Save Yourself as the first track that I actually released. And before I knew it was a story, before I knew anything, I just decided I was going to write and try to mix these sort of operatic vocals and try to put some rock behind it. And when I released it, I actually realized, I think at that point it was well received, and I thought, okay, I think I'm onto something. So why not develop the character of the Dark Angel? And then from there it started becoming a story.
Right.
So it was really interesting because it was at that point where I added Brian's amazing guitar licks in there. He's got 2 guitar solos in Save Yourself. How did that happen? 3?
Right.
Which was kind of fun. And it's interesting because it was the first song I had ever written. And it happens to be, so as we were working on the story and it was becoming a story, it actually landed as the last track on the first album. So, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, the story came together, I guess, about halfway through the release of the first album, or the completion of the first album, I guess, because the songs all had a theme and they all centered around Liz's character of the Dark Angel. And it was when we were about halfway done that we thought, there's kind of a story here. And then we started putting the songs in order and saying, okay, what still needs to be told here if we are going to make this a story? What songs need filled in where, and how do we make it more of a narrative that makes sense, rather than just, to your point, like a more general concept album of songs that are about a fall from grace and into an actual story.
Yeah, I found out about you through Diane from Potter's Daughter, and
Sure.
and now Octarine Sky.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you heard that album? I'm
yes.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And then when you guys combine your 2 bands, when you did that recent live, how you guys did together, it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, I have been, being here in Maine, we don't get that much live shows. I mean, at least in the Prague, or as you were saying earlier, Prague adjacent bands, it's usually, I mean, we're stuck with, I call them the greatest hits bands, or country bands, or hip hop rap bands. I mean, we don't get that much original rock bands up this way for whatever reason. I think it's the population thing mostly, but I haven't really been to a live show, but it's like, I mean, I'm glad now that we're hopefully at the tail end of this pandemic that we're gonna have more live shows. I know a lot of the bands that I've talked to, they're itching to get back out there, and a lot of the fans are itching to get live music. I mean, I've mentioned, there's since the pandemic, we got Zoom, and then there's a few bands that I heard that actually did a live concert, not on Zoom, but as they live streamed it. And so it's like, I mean, you got that right now, that'll be like an extra added bonus to have that to reach even more people out there.
It's interesting. It's not often that we get to talk to someone further north than we are. So that's kind of cool. But one thing about living in, we live in New Hampshire now on the seacoast. And unlike a lot of areas of the country, I think the music scene here has started to open up again. And you've got various requirements and things to go to concerts. A lot of places require you to be vaccinated to get in. Some places still require masks, but overall the scene here is happening again. I mean, post-pandemic, we've gotten to see Rick Wakeman. We saw Stanley Jordan last week. So things are happening here, at least in New Hampshire. Things are starting to open up, and there are opportunities to both see music and to perform.
Right. Yeah, you know, I see a lot of people on Facebook talking about all the different bands that they got to see or are going to see, and I don't know what what, you know, like you were saying, the different requirements and, you know,
Yeah.
on different places. I mean, I personally would prefer something more open air
Mhm.
right now, you know, until you can get this thing really nipped in the bud, you know, just out and
That's going to
in
be a
our
long
rear view. Yeah,
nipped in the bud is I work in healthcare during the day. Nipped in the bud's going to be a long time. So, you know, and of course, then without there aren't a whole lot of outdoor opportunities in New England.
right.
Um,
Yeah. It's starting to get cold out there, and
yeah.
but yeah, you know, I appreciate that. You know, I just seen different shows opening up more
Hmm.
south of New England, like Boston and down towards
Yeah.
Florida, you know, and then on the West Coast. I mean, I haven't heard too much about stuff in the Midwest except for, you know, like in the Chicago area, you know.
Right.
But I think a lot of, I mean, what was it? Progstock did you know, weren't they very strict as to who could come in?
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
I think that's, you know, I know a lot of people, some people were saying, you know, would say, you know, I don't want to have to go to something like that, you know, to be put upon, but
Hmm.
I put out to those people, it's like, do you want to get the performers on stage sick just because you want to go to a concert? You know, it's the audience's guess in a way their responsibility right now to make sure that you as the performer don't get sick, so you can have more shows to do.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, everyone's got the ability to, you know, to attend. There have been certain circumstances where theater here requires wearing a mask through an entire performance. I'd rather stay home. You know, that's just, and it's not a political statement. It's just, I don't want to
Right.
sit with a mask on my face for 3 hours and watch a show. So,
Right.
you know, I don't go. You know, it's easy enough to resolve, I think, without a lot of screaming and hollering. But I think
Right.
people enjoy the hollering at this point. But yeah, the requirements there were pretty tight, and I haven't heard of anything negative coming from it.
No. Mhm.
No, I've actually heard a lot of positive things saying, you know, I did hear one person tell me that out in California that there was one club that didn't say you had to show the card on their website and everything. But then when you got there,
Yeah,
they're asking for it. It's like, you know, I think I understand that they didn't want to lose customers ahead of time, but
they're going to lose them one way or the other if they don't
yeah,
announce it in advance.
right. And it's like, you know, but you know, I think everybody's learning on how to do it the right way. And so far, you know, I think as long as you keep the performers first and foremost healthy, and then the audience, you know, I think that's should be the goal, because, you know, it would be a shame if the band that you're going to go see all of a sudden gets sick, you know.
Yeah, right.
And it's like then they got to cancel their shows or reschedule.
That happened
And
with Kiss, didn't it?
yeah,
I don't know who got ill, but someone. I don't think it was a. You know what? I don't know enough. I know they had to cancel it because someone involved in the someone in the organization was positive.
so about let's get back, Dark Beauty. Now, I did, because of you and Diane, I did subscribe to that Spotify, even though I'm not fond of what it or doesn't really pay, but
Well, that's certainly.
I think it was, I'm not sure which one it was. It was telling me it's like if you get enough people joining it and listening to the songs that, you know, it's just like an added bonus as to CD sales. And it's like, but I think the only downside is some people don't buy the CD.
Mhm.
And they just use, you know, Spotify as their library, you know, and it's like I don't, I mean, there could be you know, if there's licensing issues that, you know, your favorite band's album will be up there this week, but then next week it's not, and then you don't have it. You can't access. Whereas
Yeah.
having a seat, you know, the physical media, you know, you can access it anytime you want.
Yeah, I think sadly this is a battle that I don't know how to win. I mean, you know, no one under 40, I don't think, is even familiar with the idea of buying product anymore. And it's an area actually that in the progressive and classic rock area, we're actually more fortunate than most styles of music in that some people at least still do buy physical product. You know, the whole idea of being introduced to music by streaming services and then going out and buying the product is a nice idea. I don't know how often it actually converts. I don't know how often it actually happens.
Right.
But, you know, a lot of talk I've heard from music industry people, you know, over the past 5 years or so has been, you're not going to make money off your music. Like those days are over. You have to have ancillary product. You have to be selling t-shirts or spaghetti sauce or, you know,
Right.
and, you know, that, you know, not to be all grandpa, but, you know, when I started making music 30 years ago, you know, between people at the door, you could pretty much assume every 2 or 3 people, someone was going to buy a CD, someone was going to buy a t-shirt, and a lot of that's gone now. And it seems like those revenue streams have been, you know, instead of making $10 on this one thing, you have to make a nickel on 1,000 different things. And I think the problem with that is you end up having to do 100 different things other than music. You know, you have to source who's going to make your spaghetti sauce and who's, you know, all this. We have a brand of spaghetti sauce. Do we want to announce this today? We're selling Mama Tapia's marinara sauce with a picture of the Dark Angel on the front. So go to darkbeautymusic.com and buy the spaghetti sauce.
Not a bad idea,
but no, but honestly, you know, we're just trying to make the best of the tools that we have. You know, I think as far as streaming services go, we've actually had a decent amount of luck with Bandcamp because they do pass through a decent amount of the money for purchases to the artists. And Spotify is what it is. You know, you can't ignore it.
Right. Yeah. I think it's rooted in too deep right now for anything to really change, you know, that.
So we're trying to do something positive with it.
Yeah, I saw that. The artists, you know.
I think I look at it as a way of not so much in terms of sales, but I look at it more for awareness, to create more awareness for the artists. And then somehow I think those numbers, as the streams get higher and higher, it sort of bumps you up somehow. And I don't know if it has to do with the algorithms and how that works, but I definitely look at it more as a tool for awareness for the artists. And I know my numbers have certainly gone up as well as the entire group. So it's been a really good experience for us so far in those terms. So I'm hoping that continues to sort of bump us up along the way, and you discover new artists also. I've noticed from streaming it's introducing me to different libraries and extended libraries from the people that I'm already listening to, which is great because I'm discovering more of their music as
Right.
well.
Right.
So that's the one thing I do love about it. And I think somehow this group has really put me in touch with the musicians that are in the group, and I just feel more connected to them. And it makes me want to share their stuff, and it makes me want to create more awareness for them. So for me personally, I love getting in contact with all of the artists that are a part of it, because we're
Right.
all kind of paddling the same way and trying to just, I'm trying to create not only awareness for dark beauty, but for all of them as well too. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm probably in the very minority of, I use, not Spotify, but I've used YouTube and Amazon Music to discover, if someone recommends something to me, and it's like, um, back in the 90s, I dove into anything. If I read a description on the album, and obviously pre-internet, just dive right in. So a lot of blind purchases
Mhm.
and like a 50-50 disappointment. So I think with the streaming thing, for me, I use it as a way to see, okay, if a friend of mine recommends me an album, I want to first hear to see they if they really know my tastes,
mhm.
or if they're just recommending it because this is their most favorite album in the world, and and they could be listening to a kind of style of music that I wouldn't even touch,
Right.
but with streaming, I kind of use it for that. And then of course you got Bandcamp
Right.
Mhm.
allows you to stream too. So I mean, I think it's a good kind of try before you buy type of a
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
But I'm a big advocate for physical media because there's no greater thrill than when you get the package in the mail
Oh
and you
yeah.
open it up and you got the CD, or if people are into vinyl, they open up to get those, the vinyl that open, gate folds and the liner notes and everything. I mean, there's no greater thrill
Yeah. And
than to do.
another wonderful thing about physical media is, I mean, obviously sometimes it can break, but it can't be taken away from you.
Exactly.
And people spend, and I'll guiltily include myself in this, people spend a lot of time curating playlists in someone else's world. They're
Right.
building their shop on someone else's land. And if Spotify is bought by Amazon Music tomorrow, all that work could be gone.
Exactly.
And when you've got the CD, I mean, and of course the other thing is, a lot of the CDs I have are of friends' bands, from the 90s and 2000s, stuff that's not on streaming media anywhere, because I have a couple CDs from a band in Pittsburgh called Ubermensch, who I can't even find mention of on the internet. And they were really kind of neat. The word neo is overused, but they're kind of that Marillion sounding kind of stuff.
Right.
Fantastic music. And had I relied on streaming for it, I would have never found them.
Right. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons, and I think there's more, for me personally, there's more cons because um I like, getting like I said, getting the physical media, because especially if I can get it through the band, that
Right.
they get 100% of the money. You
Yep.
know, if you go through like a store, you're getting, the band's not getting the full 100%. But at least they're getting the directly the money that way. And it just, my collection is small in comparison to a lot of other people I've talked with. And
Right.
so it's like I can't imagine how you know, how big of a room some of these people need just for their music. They probably just need a bedroom just for their music,
Mhm.
you know, and again, that's great. And I mean, again, when you're going back to the streaming, you said like the under 40 crowd. I would go even lower, the under 30 crowd. You tell them about a CD, and you probably get like wondering what are you talking about?
Yeah. And
And
yeah, every year for Christmas, we give gag gifts. Just along with the regular Christmas gifts, we'll give out things from the dollar store. And it wasn't too long ago, we gave Liz's nephew, we just got him a Maxell cassette and wrapped it up all nice and put a bow on it. No kidding. He opens it up and says, "What is this?" I'm like, wow, like the generational divide became really clear.
right. I mean, we thought had a divide with our parents, and it's like it's even more. It seems to be even more. But there's a few of the younger generation that are actually curious, you
Mhm.
know, as to what media came before them. And I mean, I'm surprised that a lot of younger kids are getting vinyl, you know,
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm.
and but I think with this album, and I saw that you've already released the second album, but on digital.
Yes.
And we did talk about maybe going all digital, and we decided in the end, you know what, for a couple of different reasons. I, I like physical product. Like you said, there is nothing like, and I do miss vinyl for that, about being able to take it home, open it up, read the liner notes, read the credits. And, even on a CD, you don't quite get that experience. But we decided we are releasing CDs. They should be out this year, actually. But we wanted to go digital first, release it on Bandcamp, and then the CDs will be out later this year.
Yeah.
That's the best way to go using Bandcamp, because all I hear is nothing but good things.
Yeah.
You know, that they actually care about the artists that are on their platform. Not there to screw them over, you know. And I mean, that's really what especially the independent artists, they really need that. They need someone they're gonna look out for their best interests. And
Yeah.
then especially what was that? They're still doing that on the first Friday of every month. 100% of the money goes directly to,
Yep.
do you get, and it's like, you know, what other platform does that,
Right.
with the exception if you personally are selling it, but, you know,
And we do sell our own downloads, and the CDs are at darkbeautymusic.com. But you need the distribution, and we found Bandcamp to be. This second album is the first time we've used them, but so far the experience has been nothing but positive.
Yeah.
yeah, and you can get your music out a lot quicker than a CD, and that's actually a good idea to release it digitally before you put out the CD, because I've seen a lot of people comment that I got the digital and I can't wait to buy the CD. So it's like they're gonna in essence, they're gonna double dip on that, which is good. I mean, to hear someone say, "Okay, I got the digital, I'm also want to get the CD," because some people would say, "Oh, I got the digital, that's all I need."
I have actually had a few people already tell me that they have enjoyed the digital tracks and they're excited for the CD to come out and actually get the physical packaging. So yeah, it's pretty much what you're saying. It's kind of nice to have fans that are such big fans that they're interested in both, and that's wonderful. And we
Are
certainly
you, are
appreciate
you
the support.
are you gonna do this kind of a setup for the second one?
The
Besides,
second one has, it's similar. It's not a trifold, it's just bifold.
right,
Um, and it's going to have some beautiful artwork to it. And I think once we get into the third part of the story, we're probably going to end up doing the trifold and do a full packaging, and that will tie up this trilogy of our story of the Dark Angel. So the second one is not quite the trifold, but it's still just as beautiful.
right, yeah. I mean, I like when bands put, not only their music, but then they put some artwork to it to, you know, maybe to slightly, explain what's going on. It's like,
Mhm.
Right.
like the castle with the eyes up there,
Whose eyes are those?
I wonder. Those are actually my eyes that were photographed, and then of course dockered up. Dockered? Is that how you say
Those are my
doctor?
pants.
Doctor.
What's the word? I'm
Doctored.
thinking? Doctor. Thank you. Just to make it look mysterious, and
Right.
but the album overall for Fall from Grace, it has a real beautiful feel about it. I feel it's very, very telling of what you're going to be hearing in the music. And that's
Right.
one of the things that I love about the artwork. And I don't know if you've gotten to the insert that comes out, and there's an insert that opens up to a beautiful pair of wings, and it has all of the lyrics to the songs in there.
Oh yeah.
In type that I am far too old to be able to read. So I think it's 2 point something.
Well, it's like you can get out, for us fogies, you can
Yay, there it is. Yes,
get out the magnifier glass.
exactly.
Well, that's how I got to do it, but I mean, it's wonderful packaging. The music, very, dark and atmospheric. I mean, and touches on it touches onto the prog genres. You got the operatic vocals and the similar what they do in that goth metal. But it's like you guys have the. It's like you got the heavy guitars, but you're not in metal territory. Which I like. I mean, it's like, there's, you know, people. It's like, okay, okay, we've got female vocalists that does the operatic vocals, so I think, okay, well, they're going to be, goth metal,
Yeah.
prog metal, and it's like, and it's a nice change. It's a nice welcome change that you guys didn't go there because I think there's too many of those types of bands out there.
Yeah.
And it's good to try, to be as original as you can, and I mean, you guys do it really well with this album. I mean, I've listened to it a couple times now, and it's like it's even though it's I think I saw it was released in 2014.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it sounds fresh. There's sometimes when you listen to older, well, albums that are more than 5 years, that
Right.
sometimes they kind of, I mean, at least production wise, it kind of sound
Sure.
because technology is ever changing. It's like you can do things today that you couldn't do even 5 years ago. And
Yeah. I think each song, when we write and particularly when we arrange, I think each song ends up being what it needs to be to tell the story.
Mhm.
And I do listen to a lot of heavier stuff. And I think that might come through more on the second album than the first, but it didn't feel like metal, if that makes any
Right.
sense. Like, there are similar stories, and I'm actually a big fan. I hope I don't get myself in trouble here, but like King Diamond and Merciful Fate
Right.
do stories that are kind of similar. I mean, they're dark and they deal with religious themes and things like that. And for him and what they do, metal is the perfect vehicle for those stories.
Exactly.
But it didn't feel right for us. And we might do a metal song before this is all over. But overall, I think hard rock is a little better vehicle for your lyrics and melodies.
I think, yeah, I think that it's interesting. A lot of people want to classify me into the metal genre, but
Yeah.
it's really not metal. But although in the second album, in between sixes and sevens, it's definitely a heavy, as you know, as the story progresses, the music is much heavier. And again, it's telling to the story that we're writing of the Dark Angel and her experience. So you can hear it and you can feel it. It's like the whole thing just gets a lot heavier. And I think it's just going to really let the listener, take them on a journey and let them know, okay, we're really getting into it here in this part of the
Right.
story. And she's really experiencing all of these things that are happening to her. And you can feel that in the music and the arrangements. And so, but I definitely feel it's more classical / progressive. It's not quite metal,
Yeah.
but I think
But
it's, yeah, no, I just want to say it's not quite metal, but the second album definitely leans heavier.
well, it sounds like, the songs and the story is going to change with the mood.
Mhm.
And, it's like you're not going to have, you know, nice soft ballads all the way through, to
Right.
tell your story because, it doesn't portray emotions that way. You're going to have your ups and downs and, you know, you're going to have joyful moments. You're going to have fits of anger, and things. So it's like the fits of anger, you're not going to have it a nice soft little ballad. You want it to reflect that emotion,
Right.
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah. No, sorry. The emotion, I think, is a big part of it. And if you look at a song like Wicked Dollhouse, if you listen to the lyrics of that, it's really a dark piece because the Dark Angel, the lead character, is basically in control of a lot of people's lives. She's playing people like dolls in a dollhouse and she loves it. And that's what we tried to get across in the music is, it's really a dark theme when people think about, oh, I'm being controlled, my boss has me dancing on strings. But you got to think, someone is really enjoying, the puppeteer is
right.
really enjoying the experience. And that's what we tried to get across with the music there is that could have been written musically in a much more darker style and gotten across. It would have been a different idea, but we wanted to get across the absolute joy with which she's toying with people's lives.
Right.
So, a song like that, I think could have been a lot harder, but it almost, it's funny. We actually had some trouble putting together the recording of that one because the parts of it are very, very different. It almost could be a Meatloaf song. So it could almost be musical theater performed
Right.
in a slightly different way. But that's to get across the emotion of the lyrics.
And Fall from Grace, as our debut album, hitting it with Dark Lullaby right from the beginning
Right.
Yeah.
is the perfect setup to the
That's
story
what
of the Dark Angel.
That's what I had that on my little notes. It's like I said that was I like that. It was a strong jump right into,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in today's world, it seems like with stories, like in movies, if you don't get your point across within the first couple minutes,
Yeah.
people think, oh, this is boring, and it's like, I mean, I do like, what they nowadays are classifying movies as, if they go slow, it's a slow burn, and
Right,
it's like,
right.
and it's like, I like those because it introduces me to characters, but you guys did it kind of a little bit like a slow burn, but just you jump right into the story.
Yeah. And this, it actually is funny. It wasn't really our intention when we wrote this song, but I think that song is as close as you can have to the absolute perfect introduction to the band. If you think about a band like, I don't know, Yes, how can you introduce someone to Yes with one song? It'd be difficult because there's so many aspects to the band.
Right.
It happened to be in that song. We've got kind of a heavy introduction. We've got a melodic ballad style in the verse. We've got kind of a proggy orchestrated section, little guitar solo at the end. It's as close as there can be to one song to introduce you to Dark Beauty.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
And it has such a flowing thing
Mhm.
vibe to it. It just flows. It's like, it's not um it's not the typical of, like the angular style of music where it's like they have to do as many time changes as possible. And I mean, I start to, I don't mind that, but I start to wonder, it's like, are they doing that for the song or doing that to show off? And it's like, I much rather have the song tell itself
Yeah.
than the music being, forced. It's forced on you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think some of the more progressive aspects of the music have just flowed from Liz's melodies, in that they imply these kind of oddball chord progressions that seem natural when you listen to them. But then as a musician, when you look at the chart, you go, wait a minute, we're doing what? But it still makes sense. And then, like, from the new album, a song like Break the Spell, that sounds pretty straightforward, is still changing key on a regular basis. There's a couple places where we drop beats and it all kind of necessitated not by trying to show off. And believe me, I'm not afraid of showing off. I'm not averse to showing off, but I think it needs to be in limited portions of, at least, for this kind of music. We're not trying to be Dream Theater.
Right.
There's a place for that in the world, and that's not what we're trying to do. But at the same time, I do like to have the soaring guitar solo every once in a while and some weird
Right.
time signatures. But as long as I think the important part, at least for us, is that it's all serving the song and the story.
And that's one of the things that I love about working with Brian, because he has, I really feel,
Go on. No, go on. Go on. Go on.
I feel like he's the perfect balance to the things that I try to do on my end. So it's like I'm coming in with this sort of classical melody, and then I
Right.
throw it at him and I say, okay, this is what I'm thinking. And then he comes back with this whole other side to it. And so I started the project by myself, and then
Right.
we started writing together. And then as we started working more together, it became this thing like that. We just got better at it and better at it. And I feel like you can really hear it in the second album. You can really feel how we write together and how that music comes. Would you say that's pretty
Yeah.
accurate?
Well, no, and Liz is a good counterbalance to me, because I've worked, bands earlier in my life. I was in a band called Progressive Dementia, which was kind of like a Mr. Bungle kind of pretty far out stuff.
Right.
And so my tendencies sometimes are to go a little in that, hey, let's put a polka in here, only in 5 with a Brazilian backbeat. And I will know. One nice thing about working with Liz, the best thing is, I know when I've gone too far, because
Right.
I just get
No.
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 That's, I don't have to wonder whether she likes the part. Do it again. No.
No, I'm pretty vocal when it comes to
No, but I mean, I
parts
think
that I like and parts that I don't care for.
yeah. I
But
think it works though.
it
works.
does. I mean, we have really become, I think for Dark Beauty, it's a nice, solid, strong team, and it's very
Yeah.
balanced. I feel like it's exactly what Dark Beauty is supposed to be.
Well, and I think us as a songwriting partnership, we bring contrasting things that
Yeah.
work well together. I wrote some just ridiculously complex stuff that I was really proud of, but what it was always missing was melody. I can write a hook, I can write a chord progression, I'm pretty good at arrangements. My melodies were always kind of straightforward. What Liz brings is kind of a sense of an epic scope that my stuff didn't really have. Serious lyrics, which my stuff never had. I had, okay, here's an example. I have an 8-minute song about a baby carrot and how sad it is that he was ripped away from his mother and eaten. That's the kind of thing, right?
Right.
So now I'm using that for good instead of for stupid.
Right. Well, with her classical background, I mean, I always thought that, that's always classical has always been part of progressive, especially when you have the more epic and orchestral and symphonic feel to the music. So it's like it was like perfect blend. You know, I it's usually with the when they try to blend different styles, sometimes they come across very forced.
It can, yeah.
And it's I mean, for as a listener, it's always nice when I can put on a song from start to finish and not feel like I'm looking at my watch, like going, okay, it's eight. Let's say it's 8 minutes. It's like, okay, it's 2 minutes in. It's like, okay, move along,
Yeah.
that kind of a thing. And I don't like that because it's like I want the song. The minute I put it on, I can close my eyes and I'll go to whatever the subject matter is. I can try to envision by the lyrics and then the atmosphere of the music. I try to envision myself in as close to what the artist was trying to portray. And it's always nice. I mean, especially like I said, with this music, this time of the year, lights out, headphones on,
Yeah.
and loud enough that you can drown everything out, but not enough that you're gonna kill your ears.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's just the perfect time of the year. I mean, especially once we get that snowfall hitting,
Yeah. I mean,
Definitely.
you mentioned adding in styles and how it can kind of sound forced. There's a couple songs on the new album, one where we use kind of an ambient, almost new agey kind of section, and then another one, Rabbit Hole, where there's like almost a country galloping kind of thing. But it wasn't that we came to the writing session saying, okay, there needs to be a new age section here.
Right.
And, what it was, okay, what will tell the story best? And I think we're not limiting ourselves to, now, I mean, it's not that I'm a great country picker, I'm not, but, I can fake it for 16 bars. And if there's something that needs that kind of feel to tell the story, then we put it in. But I hope the stuff doesn't sound forced because, it all, we're all just trying to write for the story.
Yeah.
Right. And you can almost envision this put up on like a
Gonna say it.
like
You're about
a
to think we're happy.
like a movie or animated feature of some sort.
Go.
Well,
That's what.
Funny you should mention
funny
that.
you should mention that. So as I started working on Dark Beauty, and the more that I started thinking about the character, for me, I come from an acting background also, and I've done acting, I've done film work, I've done, theater, and I feel like this whole entire Dark Beauty project really incorporates kind of a little bit of everything that I've done in my career. So I always look at Dark Beauty as, I tell people Dark Beauty is a story band. And so I want to see it unfold on stage as a story. I want the audience to be immersed. I want to take them on a journey, not only just through listening to the music, but visually is really just as important to me. So it's interesting that you're describing it like that, because I've always looked at and thought of Dark Beauty as it's more than just a band. It's an entire epic unfolding on stage right before
Right.
your eyes. And that's how I would really, my dream is to put it up on stage as such.
I mean, we're using TSO, I think it's safe to say, as kind of a model for
Right.
what, I mean, not musically, obviously, although there's some similarities in the music, but in that the show is mostly about music, like we would want ours to be, but there's occasional narration, there are characters. I mean, I don't know if you ever saw when Queensryche did the kind of a staged version of Mind Crime. It was very similar. Just they played the whole album straight, but there was a little bit of voiceover to kind of connect the pieces. Again, not too dissimilar from The Wall, the film,
Right.
kind of thing. That there's not a lot of dialogue, but there's enough to kind of tie things together where you might need it to follow the story.
Right. I mean, first and foremost, I think a lot of bands, especially if they do a concept album, I mean, Pink Floyd did it, made it into a film.
Yeah.
I think some band, they have that, if it's not in the back of the mind, it's somewhere in that vicinity that, wouldn't it be nice if we can put it up, But like with this, I personally, I can envision because of the way the cover is in that told in this kind of a format, I guess it would probably be like an animation, or something.
I see it with, I see a lot of things in my head for this. I see I see a video behind us. I envision in my head, I see this tower that the angel becomes the ruler of, the Tower of Markoum. And I see the tower very present on stage with us.
Like this,
And
that
exactly.
tower.
Yes. So I would love to see the tower on the stage with us. And I would like to see the band moving through this tower as we're telling the story. So there's a lot of moving parts to this.
Right.
I think it would make it really interesting, along with, of course, your special effects and, video projection and video mapping and all sorts of fun things on stage with us. Brian may be coming from the ceiling, lowering down with his guitar. I don't know.
So for everyone out there with a couple of million to spend and you need a tax break for the arts,
yes,
ask your attorney about tax breaks for funding the arts. Okay, you want to, just give us a couple $100,000 to put this show up. We'll name the band after you. Whatever, it'll be
yeah. That would, I always have the, not in that sense, but I always have that dream thing, you win the, up here we have the lottery, and especially when they get into the hundreds of millions dollar range, it's like, what do with that? It's like, contact at least 5 of my favorite bands and say, look, you want to put out an album and actually do a full tour of the United States? Okay, you can do it. I mean, that's always been on the back of my mind. aside from taking care of, personal things and bills and such,
Right.
but to do something like that. But, I mean, you can probably do something similar to what you're saying, if you can't do it on the super grand scale, you can probably do it, a happy medium,
Yeah.
Well,
you know,
I'm happy to say that we have a few people that we've been in touch with already that have a lot of tech kind of background, things that they can add and they could help us with, and that are also excited to offer their time and their talents to help us
Yeah.
to produce a show that has some special effects. And so I'm really excited for this next year coming in, because I feel like finally this is like we're going to be going into the part of the story and the part of the project that I really enjoy, all the production aspect of it, and
right.
how we would put the stage, and how would we put this tower on stage with us, and how is everyone going to move through this while we're performing. And so there's I see it as just one big giant, very technical but fun project at the same time.
And we're also working on things that can scale. Like, for example, Liz mentioned the video projections. I mean, we're working on a couple of video projections that, if we play another theater, like with Prague Stock, or, another festival, or we get booked on any circumstance where we can play a bigger stage, great, you can project it behind you. But if we're playing a bar for 50 people, you can put it on a big screen TV. These elements you can bring
Mhm.
with you to different levels and different
Oh,
types
yeah.
of stages, so that we can always, or at least try to make it part of the show.
And the thing is, if you do go on the, closer to the bigger scale, again, there's that live streaming aspect that,
Mhm.
you'll get people that are from, let's say if you have fans down in Australia or South America or Europe or Asia, that they can't afford to come to you with a live stream, you go to them, and I know of one band that did it very successfully, Pineapple Thief.
Sure. Yeah.
They did that because they've, I think this month or something like that, they're releasing not only a CD of the show, but a Blu-ray, because they had like multi cameras and everything. And I think it's just, and for the pandemic, they had to adapt. But I think that in the coming years, that's going to be on the table for bands, that they're going to be able to reach all their fans, not just a select few that can afford
Yeah.
to see. That's
Yeah. And I think, a hybrid approach, I, streaming shows were something of a mixed blessing, because we did a couple right after the pandemic kind of shut everything down. And I got to admit, playing music while staring into a camera does, for me anyway, take some of the juice out of it. Playing for a camera is better than doing nothing.
true.
But to not have the audience feedback, you were finishing a song, Liz is singing, and we finished the song, and da 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 da.
Nothing. Yeah. Yeah.
Then you
That
try to
that I
squint over at the chat thing, and are they saying nice things? But the nice thing about a hybrid model is, like when we were at Prague Stock, that show was streaming.
right,
So
right.
so we had an audience, we had live people, we had the feedback, but Liz's parents, who live 1,000 miles away, were able to stream the show and see it that way.
Yeah.
So I think that, for me anyway, is the perfect model, because you can perform live for people and have that instant feedback, but also be able to project it to your four fans in Madagascar, who
Right.
we probably won't be able to afford to go there.
Right.
I think that's a great setup.
And also too, like you were saying with the Prague Talk, where you had a couple hundred or so people there live to feed, you know, I had mentioned to one band earlier last year about it, is if you get to a point where we are now, where bands can, if they're in the within similar towns,
Mhm.
they can get together in person and with friends and family, have them be their audience, but then broadcast it outward. And that's there's so many things now you can do that you'll be able to hit.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I think I don't know. We did 3 or 4 of those live stream shows in the end, and we did a couple of them from our condo. That was that experience I talked about a little while ago, where you finish a song and there's just nothing. Then the last couple we did at Liz's parents' house and did exactly what you mentioned. We invited friends and family, and I don't think there were more than half a dozen people there, but just those few people providing the instant
Oh, yeah.
feedback and applauding
Oh yeah,
and also to be able to focus on, look at people while you're playing. I think
Right.
that made a big difference. Even just having that small audience there helped a lot.
I
well,
think
it's
that's
like
fun.
you got a thing going on with your audience. They're feeding off of what you're doing, and then you seeing what their reaction to it. So it's like a nice little
Yeah.
codependency type of a thing going on, where you depend on each other. If the audience is reacting to you in a positive light, that means that you're going to be playing at your top.
And also, responding to the audiences. We don't do it as much as I have in other projects, but still, the ability to, if you look out at Mirage from the first album, there's a section at the end, which we call it the party scene, but it's just kind of an extended jam section that, one night, actually the first time we played live at the after party for Progstock, the audience was really into that song, I think more than we might have even expected them to be. But we can extend that section, because you look out, you go, oh my gosh, there's people dancing. People never dance to Prague. Okay, let's extend this section.
Right.
Or the flip side, if they're not into the heavier stuff, we can replace a song during the set, because you do get that instant feedback.
Yeah,
and I'm not scared of responding to that, and hopefully improving the show by making tweaks along the way.
Right. So it's like everything. I mean, we got so many different options now that are on the board that, hopefully there'll be, more software programs out there that'll accommodate. I mean, the one that I put when I first started doing the show, of the aspect of, if we're never going to get back in the same rooms together, that if the different band plays, different members play from different locations live, and then someone said, well, you're going to have the lagging,
Right.
So it's like, be nice if someone down the line creates a software that will accommodate for that, where it's like,
I heard they're close, that it's getting closer and closer and closer. Part of it's your internet connection, obviously.
Yeah.
I was in another band called Third Degree, and we were rehearsing a few years back to put a tour together, and the other guitarist was in LA. And what we did then, the rest of us were all in one room. It was just this guitarist in LA. So we played and streamed to him, and he played along with us, but we couldn't hear him. So we just took his word for it.
Right.
We tried to hook it up, and to your point, the lag was just, I mean, it was only like half a second, but that's enough to kill you. You can't,
Right.
It's gotta be instantaneous. I mean, I'm sure you've had the circumstance where you get in your headphones just a little bounce back of what you said right after you said it, and
Right.
you can't even talk. Like, nothing works that way. But I've heard they're getting closer and closer. So
Yeah, I know when I do this, I have to shut off my Facebook on my computer, or else I will get that weird feedback thing going. And for a while, I was wondering, why is it making that weird hum on my end? No one else was hearing it. I was hearing it.
Mhm.
And then someone said, well, turn off your Facebook, because it's like it's interfering somehow.
Mm.
Right.
And so, technology is coming along. I think in a weird way, the pandemic is actually kind of pushing forward a lot, getting us to that point a lot quicker than had the pandemic not happened.
Yeah, I've heard said it's gotten us more quickly to places where we were going to get anyway. Retail was going to be in a worse shape because everyone was going to have things shipped to their homes. We were all going to be working from home. Like that was going to happen eventually. It just accelerated the timeline on a lot of things.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, but one thing for me after doing this for a little over a year now is I got to talk to people that I normally wouldn't have been able to talk to had there
Hmm.
not been a pandemic.
Right.
And then to connect and with people, especially new people, that you have similar likes
Mhm.
and interests of sorts, and with music, I mean, I think in this, what is it now, almost 2 years, I've discovered so many new bands, yours included, that I don't think I would have covered as many, you know, and I mean, with people, recommending, and then of course, then uh, that becomes like that rabbit hole where it's like, oh, well, then, like when I talked with Diane, and then I saw on her page you guys, and I'm like going, okay, I got to find out what they're all about, because she keeps on mentioning, and I'm like, okay, I got to go and check that out. So it's like it's that kind of rabbit hole where you
Yeah.
you go down, and then I'm really that thing you did on Spotify, the musicians helping musicians, or I'm not sure the exact wording, but where you are helping people, like you said earlier, the awareness, and then also it's another rabbit hole that you're going down. So it's like
Yeah.
you listen to that whole playlist, and then you go, well, if there's something that you like from there, then you go, well, I want to hear more of that artist, not just that particular song. And you go further, and then of course, Spotify does their algorithm, so they'll choose stuff for you, and sometimes it's been right, and then sometimes when
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
listening, I have Iron Maiden on my list, and then they start recommend that I listen to hip hop. I'm like going, no, that's different.
That's
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah.
I think at that point, I think they're only doing their algorithm based on words, not what the
Mm.
genres
Okay.
are, so
Yeah.
that's what I think. But
Yeah.
I mean,
It-
it's
yeah.
it's been more hit than miss, for me, what they recommended. And then, of course, I go investigate the band. First thing I'd like to know is how many albums they have out.
Right.
So, and I know a lot of people will buy like the more recent one, but I like to start from the beginning because I like
Mhm.
to see how the band developed, because I think if you go the other way, it's almost like it's like, okay, it's going from something modern, something, further back, and it's like you don't get the evolution part,
Right.
you know,
I
you know,
love what you're saying, Ron. I love that because I feel, especially for a band like what we're doing with Dark Beauty, that it is a story. So you're not catching
Yeah.
it from the middle part of the story. You're starting from the beginning.
yeah, I think
And
that's the best way to do it.
it's like what you just said, this evolution, and not just the story for me personally, but my vocals have changed a lot from, they've grown from the beginning part of the album to, like, I can hear, well, I mean, I hear and I know, my voice has really grown from oh gosh, what was that, like from 2014 when we first
Right.
released it. So there's a lot of growth in my vocal style and just some changes. And so yeah, it's kind of great that you're saying that, because you'll hear the difference as you keep listening onto the stuff that we
Well,
just.
well, your type of band, you have to start from the beginning because it's like coming into a movie halfway through. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Exactly.
you're not going to get what's going on here. You're not going to understand. You know, But let's say if you were just doing, individual songs that had, different, different, I, you know, ideas about it. It's like you go, okay, I can get, okay, the band has 5 albums. Well, I'll get the newest one. It's not gonna matter so much. But it's for story bands like yourself, bands that do concept albums, or there's now you're the second band that I've talked to that's doing a trilogy.
Hmm.
So the other band is Glass Hammer.
Oh,
Oh,
sure.
nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're doing a trilogy too, and they just released their second part. So, and there's bands, another band called Evership that they're
Mhm.
doing a two-parter. So it's like I like that. I mean, this is the genre of music they should really get away with that more so than any other genre. Uh, because it fits the genre.
I love
Whereas,
what you're saying. Yeah. Especially the fact that it has, like with Dark Beauty, we're now writing the third album. So with having the trilogy, I'm excited to see how we package the entire story from beginning to end, and then really pitch it for like as a sort of a two-part album.
oh yeah, that'll be a long show if you guys did every song.
No, we wouldn't do every song, but we will tell the whole story.
Right.
We'll get all of
I-
the songs out there, and they might not necessarily be in the order they should be when we put the show together. And then when we go to put the show together, we'll say, okay, this is where this is the arc of the story, and this is where it kind of fits in, and then
right.
we'll present it,
Yeah.
in that order.
And songs can be edited, could be longer,
Yeah.
could be some additional material written just for the stage show. I mean, who
Mhm.
knows? We're going
Right.
to kind of look at that as a different. I mean, and it's not going to vary radically, I don't think, from the albums we put out. But kind of looking at that as a separate art form. Whereas with just listening to the album, we want people to do some of the work to put the different songs together into a story. Let them do that work themselves. Whereas with a stage show, you do a little bit. Obviously, you still leave some questions unanswered. You let the audience do some of the work for
Oh yeah.
themselves. But I think you hold their hands a little more as far as tying the story together.
Right.
Um,
I love what you said before about the narration,
Mhm.
just having little bits of narration in between to tie everything together. So
That's my job.
So we're excited. No, your job is to play guitar.
Oh, wow, I got to start practicing.
There you
I haven't played at all during this whole pandemic. We finished the tour last spring, and that was it.
right.
Oh my goodness.
Well, it's you. I think I would love it if some of the bands come up my way, because maybe not in my town, but I think in Portland, it has a
Yeah.
bigger population that it might draw some more people. But
How
but
far
if
are you
it's
from Portland?
Portland,
Yeah, too far from
around
Bangor.
150.
Oh, is it that long? Okay. Okay.
It's kind of big. My girlfriend calls it a mini Boston. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but at the same time, you can draw in people from Canada,
Right.
Mm.
an audience from Canada down that way that may not want to go down to Boston or,
Right.
further away because
I mean, I'd go up there for a show. It's only an hour. Heck, we went an hour to see Rick Wakeman.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'd certainly drive up to Portland to see a show. It's not that far from. It's about an hour from here.
That's not, yeah, I'm about 3.
Okay.
I think it's about 2.5, 3, somewhere on that.
So we may meet you at a future show.
Yeah, we'll meet you in Portland.
That'll be cool. That'll be very cool, you know.
Well, and actually, another way we might end up performing more is we have a 2-piece acoustic act where we're performing some original stuff, some covers, just to be able to perform more. Because I mean, one of the downsides with, I don't even know if it's a downside, but with a band like Dark Beauty, it's not like we're going to be able to play full band shows every Friday and Saturday night in this region. You kind of have to pick and choose a little bit. So we figured to get out more, we just play some acoustic gigs with just the 2 of us. And that's the kind of thing where we can be more flexible and go up to Maine and do shows. Really pretty much anywhere, because there's not a lot we have to transport.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing, is the equipment.
Yeah, I mean, we have a PA, acoustic guitar, and 2 microphones, and we're
good.
It can literally all fit in the trunk of the Hyundai. So.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, I want to thank you both for taking the time out, and sorry for the false start, some technical difficulties, but at least we got up ground.
No, I'm glad we were able to do it. Thanks for having us.
And
Thank you
I
so
do look
much.
forward to when the second album again is called.
Between 6s and 7s.
I look forward to that when it comes out on CD, because I'm definitely going to get that. I wanna
Aw,
buy it.
We will send it up your way.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for the music. I mean, it's I always love discovering new music, and especially when it just flows so well. It just makes it a treat, an extra treat, that to listen to it. And it just I can't recommend it enough. It's like, I mean, if I try to find out what people's what their music tastes are, and then I can home in on that and go, well, obviously someone that's into something a little more chaotic won't appreciate it, but someone that likes more melodic and story-based music, that this is something that they'll enjoy.
We welcome you all to darkbeautymusic.com. I mean, we're spread all over the internet, obviously.
I'm gonna put the
Website
link down below for you guys, and
Cool.
and then this is gonna go up onto YouTube, so I'll send you the link.
Very
Perfect. And
good.
I just want to give a quick shout out to Diane and Jan from Potter's Daughter and Octarine Sky. We love you guys. And also to Kevin Feely and Judy Simkes. I know I saw them in the chat room or in one of the posts that I saw there. And just thank you so much for tuning in. And and Ron, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Absolutely.
I appreciate, again, taking the time out to talk with me.
I don't think there's anything I'd rather be doing other than maybe playing, but
There you go.
talking about myself for an hour and a half. Okay.
Right. So that, I thank you again, and I'll talk with you guys soon.
Sounds
All
good.
right.
Hey,
And we'll
take
maybe
care.
do
Happy
another
holidays.
you too, and maybe we'll do this again when the CD comes out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you again.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.